Hi, and welcome to this week's Letter to Past Self. So, for this Letter to Past Self, I'm going to analyze a designer for the game What Remains of Edith Finch. The designer's name is Ian Dallas. For this for this analysis, I'm going to dive into the creative direction all about Edith Finch, as well as analyzing ways in which they how they got influence and the influences that they had when working on the project, and how using the similar concepts that they had helped with any of my projects that I'd done. Ian Dallas said when he was first creating the game that he felt that players would slip back into traditional gameplay style, where they will start to ignore what is going on in their immediate surroundings, and they would lose focus on small stories and focus on the long time objective. Instead of having one main story and one main mechanic, they decided as a team to have a collection of stories so they can reset the player's expectations. By doing this, he allows to create short bursts of quick and meaningful things. And the different inspirations that he have, instead of using other game developers, he used writers such as Neil Graham, Edgar Allan Poe, and Gabriel Garcia Marci. Gabriel Garcia Marci's 100 Years of Solitude was a great inspiration for this because it also focuses on a family's misfortune over a century, and also prepped for moments of magical realism because the game is quite magical and feels very surreal in how the story is being told. The reason for these types of people or these types of books is because they had a lot of short stories and poems where they were able to construct and create a story that was short and sad and create able to invoke that immersion. A quote from him is, "My interest, personal, is in surprise, in moments that shake people up a bit and present the world in a way people haven't considered before. That's what I continue to love about art, the ability to experience different perspective and to see things with a new eye. And I don't think that's what most video games are about. I think most video games are about challenge or time wasting or spending time with your friends. A lot of these things video games do very well, but I don't think a lot are concerned about giving people a new perspective on the world." He also said that he's also learned a little bit from his own family when creating this. Not necessarily, but when it came to constructing and creating ideas that he wanted for the game, he looked at his own grandma, who he described as a very stubborn old woman. In which case, but also praises the fact that the reason why that his grandmother is still alive is because that she's stubborn and has a strong spirit that's keeping her alive. So when he was looking at What Remains of Edith Finch, a lot of the reason that the game exists is because he was very stubborn about particular ideas, and then he thought they could work, even though they didn't seem very promising at the time of the creation. One of the ideas was a girl transforming into a shark and tumbling down a hillside, and just basically said, "Roll with it." Analyzing what he has said and how he was designing What Remains of Edith Finch, a lot of the things in which he was doing was creating short little experiences in which the player was able to retain that information but not be overwhelmed by it. He also wanted to make sure that he was designing his game uh, in ways in which it felt less, I have to get this objective, I have to do this things, and make it less objective feel based and more about just feeling what is happening there. And you can tell with this type of game in which it's not, there is a slight bit of objective where you are filling in all the missing details about each family member, but it's not about that. It's about what these deaths represent and how they feel. The drawings in the thing are more about a reflection of how these family members died and what Edith thinks about them and how she is responding to their deaths. I also what I found interesting is about the fact that he's comparing video games to be more of artistic things and rather than a waster and an excuse to hang out with people, and the fact that video games should be more art driven, and that they should have challenges in it, but it shouldn't necessarily just be about challenges. It should be about what its artistic and new perspective is about the world. What is this video game supposed to bring to this world? And you can tell with when he was making Edith Finch that that he was doing that because we were learning more about how many people deal with death and introducing topics on how people have felt about someone who's died in their family, as well as these particular views. The other thing in which was having a sense of not stubbornness when about certain ideas, mostly understanding on which ideas which would have been good and improved the game. I think this is a double-edged sword when it comes to constructing and creating any idea and working with a team, is because uh, you know that your idea is worthy and worth making, but the realistic and understanding of it being created is very limited, and your team is trying to accommodate to their strengths and trying to accommodate to what is believable and achievable. But he felt that it was worth keeping on and holding on to this idea to the end, and that we should keep doing it, and it paid off with what he was able to do. From when he was creating, so what I learned from reading this and applying this to when creating What Keeps the Fire Alive, a lot of what I was doing when researching about different ideas and outsourcing games, I was looking at Edith Finch for both how it was constructing and telling its stories, and reading more about how Ian designed these stories. I was able I was able to take what he was doing and apply it to how I was writing the past scenes and thinking about what are we introducing, because the past scenes about learning different lessons, and I think from reading how the fact that uh, all the stories in Edith Finch was about death, but like showing it in different ways and different creative ways, I was able to narrow down of what is the lesson, why doesn't the child know this lesson, and why the child should know this lesson. It also made me think about the entirety of the game of what keeps the fire alive, with the fact that it's the lessons were more on reflections of how they're keeping the child alive now and further on down his life in this post-apocalyptic world, and the fact that these are not here for no reason, and that they're here for a reason, and that's what Ian Dallas did as well, with using these looking back to how these people was demised. He was able to introduce new information either about the house, the character, and about Edith's feelings towards these people. For the stubbornness, I wasn't particularly as stubborn when writing the past, mostly because I believe that I should have been trying to be more flexible, not because I feel that just because my idea could be the best one, I shouldn't just ignore other people's ideas. But But for what keeps the fire alive, a lot of fighting for what other people believed in and being very stubborn about those ideas, such as like the campfire scene and uh, with coming up with the past and like focusing on that these lessons are important and that they need to be in the game. I learned a lot from Ian Dallas, and I think I'm gonna use how he designed Edith Finch next time I create something similar. But anyway, thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next one.